And from the tribes came prophets like David, Moses, Jesus, Hud, Solomon, many other prophets, Elias, many prophets came to the children of Israel. In some accounts, we are told that the children of Israel received about 25,000 prophets. Many thousands of prophets came to them. And as such, it is extremely important to know that prophets come as doctors go to communities. When a community is very sick, you don't send them just one doctor and that's it. It would never be enough. You send them as many doctors as there is need. So the children of Israel received so many doctors. Going back to Prophet Ibrahim, after he started to admonish, advise, and guide his community, and after he challenged his dad and his community to look at what they are doing and to recognize the fact that those idols do not benefit, do not harm, do not answer, do not hear, do not even see, and they refused, he told them, I am going to show you practically what it means. So after they left the temple, he took an axe and he started destroying all the idols, whacking them to the floor one after another, and he only left one big idol untouched. So they came back the following day and they said, who did this to our gods? And they looked at each other and they said, we heard a young man called Ibrahim did that. So they said, bring him in front of everybody and let's decide what to do with him. So they brought him and they asked him, Ibrahim, have you done this to our gods? He said, no, not me. The big one fought with them and he defeated them. Of course, he was sarcastic.
Why did he leave the big one especially?
We will know that right in a minute. So when they asked him, who did that? He said, it's the big one. He destroyed the small ones. Then they looked at him and said, come on, you know that those do not even utter a word. How could then they destroy each other like this? He said, now you know. If they don't speak a word, if they don't utter a word, if they don't say or do anything, how could you believe them to be your gods? So even when they admitted in the beginning that he is right, we were wrong, if they couldn't do this, they couldn't be gods. But then arrogance and self-conceit took over and they revoked their admission of guilt and misunderstanding and misjudgment, and they said, no, now we need to punish you. You've done something awful. So what is the punishment? They said, set up a fire and throw him in the fire and see what happens. So they tied him and they put him in a fire. And I want you to recognize and pay attention, the story in the Quran doesn't say at all that Ibrahim even asked Allah to take this fire away or anything. Allah, without Ibrahim asking, he immediately told the fire, be cool and peaceful unto Ibrahim. So the fire never burned him. The fire never burned him. And remember now the cliche, the affliction that does not break your back, it makes you stronger. When you go through a trial or a test that does not kill you, it makes you stronger. But that's only true if you have faith in God. So Ibrahim had his faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he went to his dad and told him, Daddy, I received guidance from Allah, follow me. Don't follow these guys. Don't follow this shaitan, because the shaitan can mislead you and can condemn you to hellfire. And his father refused and told him, if you don't like what I'm doing, then just get out of my face. Depart from me, I don't want to see you. And Ibrahim, as kind as he was to his father, even though his father was not a believer, but Ibrahim told him, I will continue to pray to Allah to guide you, because Allah has been quite generous to me. So I'm going to use my relationship with Him to intervene on your behalf for Allah to guide you and to keep you or to get you to the right path. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent revelation to Ibrahim above and beyond the initial knowledge that He gave him as a young man, and He commissioned him as a prophet to his people. So Ibrahim then moves away from this community in Iraq that didn't want to believe. They were only interested in killing him or getting rid of him. So he left and he went to Palestine. In Palestine, he married his wife Sarah. Sarah was then his wife for quite until the end of his life. The end of her life, not his life. She died as his wife, but he survived her death. So they went together to Egypt to make da'wah and to invite people to Islam. Sarah was very beautiful. The Pharaoh in Egypt knew, and Pharaoh is the king's title in Egypt. Like you call the king a king in English, you call him some other names in other languages. In the old Pharaonic language, the king was called Pharaoh. So Pharaoh is not a name. Pharaoh is a title. So the Pharaoh of Egypt at that time, who was a womanizer like all other pharaohs, he knew that Ibrahim had a beautiful wife, and he came as an immigrant from Iraq and Palestine, so that was not his country. So he called him in. He sent after him and called him in, he and his wife. And for fear of taking his wife away from him, as kings normally do to their subjects, Ibrahim asked his wife, if they ask you who you are, tell him that you are my sister. And now I want to caution you that this is the Jewish Hebrew story. This is not the Islamic story. This part is the Hebrew story, not the Islamic story. So Ibrahim, for fear of his wife being taken and being used as a slave for sex or other things, he told her, if they ask you who you are, don't tell them that you are my wife. Because if you tell them that you are my wife, to take you according to the law, they will kill me and then take you. But if you say that you are my sister, even if they overpower us or overwhelm us and they take you, at least they are not going to kill me and I can try to get you out. So she said that she is his sister, and they left Egypt with a gift from the king, and the gift was a maid called Hajar, a young maid called Hajar. We do not know her age, but we know that Ibrahim and Sarah both were too old. So they left both of them with Hajar in their company as a gift from the Pharaoh to accompany them and serve them and live with them. When they reached Palestine, and they had lived them together for years, and Ibrahim and Sarah were not getting children because he was too old and she was too old. So Sarah told Ibrahim, why don't you go ahead and marry Hajar so that you may get a child and we can call the child our son as well. So he married Hajar. And again, I am citing this from the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament. Okay? So he married Hajar, and Allah promised him that Hajar will be getting him a child, and he shall call his name Ishmael, and Ishmael means God heard. God heard, or the response of God to your prayer. Because Ibrahim was praying to God to have a son. He didn't want the message to die after he had left. And that also was the reason that he didn't want to get killed in Egypt. He wanted to communicate and deliver the message. So in any way, he got Ishmael, and 1 year later, he got, not 1 year later, 14 years later, he got Isaac. So who is the first son of Ibrahim? It is Prophet Ishmael. He begot Ishmael when Ibrahim was 86 years old. This is quite old, right? And he begot Isaac when he was 100 years old. Allah promised Ibrahim and that he and his descendants will be blessed, and that they will live in the land of Palestine provided the two conditions are met. Two conditions. Number one, that they will live according to the way of God. Number two, they will be doing righteousness and justice. They will be doing righteousness and justice. And of course, also as a sign of their commitment, the covenant also calls for the male members of Ibrahim's descendants and their families. All the male members will be circumcised. That was a sign of their commitment to do righteousness and justice. So circumcision was not itself the covenant, it was a sign for their commitment to the covenant. Okay? Also, one can notice that this covenant was given to the descendants of Ishmael, not only to the children of Israel. It was given to the descendants in plural, all of them, which means the descendants of Ishmael and the descendants of Ibrahim. Now, before Ibrahim begot Isaac, which means when Ishmael was just a baby, which means Ibrahim might have been 86, 87 years old, Allah ordered Ibrahim to take Ishmael and Hajar and settle them down there in Mecca, in the desert of Mecca, next to the site of the Kaaba. But Ibrahim has never been to this place before. So the Quran says, وَإِذْ بَوَّأْنَا لِإِبْرَاهِيمَ مَكَانَ الْبَيْتِ. And behold and remember, as we have shown Ibrahim the place to the house, the place to the holy house of God, which is reference to the Kaaba, the holy shrine in Mecca. So Allah showed him where the Kaaba should be, the site, and he took him there. He went with his wife, carrying the baby Ishmael. You could imagine this trip from north in Palestine all the way south to Mecca. It takes about 2 months in the desert, walking and so on and so forth. 2-month trip, very difficult one in the desert. And Ibrahim tells us the story in his own words, in his own tongue, in Surah Ibrahim, at the end of the last 2 pages of the surah. You could read it. Surah Ibrahim. As he settles his family in Mecca, he prays to Allah and he says, "Oh Allah, I have settled my family in a desert, arid, non-cultivated land next to your holy house, so that they may worship you, pray to you, and be sincere to you in their life. O Allah, make the hearts of good people want to come and be with them to build a community around this area. Put the love of people of this area in the hearts of people so that they may come and they live with a community, not by themselves." And Allah answered his prayer. As you know now, the more the humanity population grows, more people are more interested in visiting this place than ever before. In the Hajj, the Saudi Arabian Authority could never accommodate even 0.5% of the population that wants to come. So they end up doing random selection and assigning numbers for each nation and so on and so forth as to how many pilgrims can come from each country. They even limit the number of people domestically that can go for Hajj, and they limit how often they can go because the place has become overly crowded. No matter how many expansions they have, it's still not enough to accommodate all the people. So the limitation is the only thing that does not allow 500 million people to show up in Hajj. Imagine a convention with 300 million people, or even 100 million would have overwhelmed the whole world if this were to be a conference. So as Ibrahim was settling his young family, Hajar and her baby Ismail, he was still being breastfed, and she had with her some water and some little bag of dates. Nothing more, nothing less. A young wife with a young baby on her hands, and she was going to be left in the desert. Ibrahim was told to go back to continue his work and da'wah in Palestine until Ishmael grew up a bit older. So Ibrahim is leaving, and Hajar is being left alone in the desert. And there is no structure. The Kaaba was not built. The Holy Mosque was not constructed. There were no people, no shops, nothing, not even water. Even water was not there. So she runs after Ibrahim as he started to leave, and she tells him, Ibrahim, whom are you leaving us for? And he doesn't even look back. So she repeats a question, whom are you leaving us for, Ibrahim? And he doesn't even look back. No answer, not even look back. Then she asked him, Ibrahim, did Allah command you to do this? And he looked back and he said, yes, he did. Then she stopped running after him. She went back to her baby, saying to herself that Allah then will never let us down. Look at the amount of faith. Look at the strength of her faith and the strength of her trust in Allah, and ask yourself, where does this come from? Where does this come from? A mother that is now being turned a single mother, not in a village, not in a country, not in a community, by herself, in the desert, with little dates and water. She should be desperate. If this was a 21st century woman, she would have fairly asked him, come on, God told you to leave us in the desert and you go back to the town and the city and the green and you enjoy life and you leave us here to die? That would have been not a far-fetched question to ask. In fact, it would have been very normal and rational that she would pick her baby and run after him all the way back to Palestine. I'm not sitting here, right? You're leaving us with nothing. But not Hajar. Which means what? It means that Ibrahim must have put a lot of effort in educating his wife about God, about the qualities of God, about the power of God, about the trust of God, about the dependence on God, so that her faith in all of that is strong enough alongside him teaching her that they have a mission in settling this family in this piece of land. That she is going to be next to the house that was built by Adam, but then it was destroyed by environmental factors, rain, storms, dust, everything. It was destroyed, and now it is an arid, open land. The only thing they see is the foundation of the mosque, but no walls, nothing. So she settles there. I want you to remember that I'm not going to tell your husbands to leave you in the desert and try your faith. But it is a lesson there for every woman that if what you're doing is really done by God's instruction and direction, you need not to worry about the consequences. You obey Allah, and Allah will deliver you safe, and Allah will support you. So she stays, Ibrahim leaves, and of course the water and the dates are running out very quickly, and the baby is becoming thirsty and feisty and crying, wanting to have something. Her breast is not as full of milk as it used to be because she has nothing to eat, and she started to panic. So she started to run. He's running between the two little hills, As-Safa and Al-Marwa. You might be familiar with these two names, are you?
Yeah.
And this is what Muslims do today in the Hajj, which is called Sa'i, to haste run between these two hills. She started from As-Safa and she runs down the valley and up the other side of the hill, which is called As-Safa, going back and forth. What is she looking for? She is desperately looking for any sign of water, right? And she left Ishmael few yards away. And when she came back the seventh time, back to the sixth time to Al-Safa, she found Ishmael kicking the floor with his heels, and the ground gushed with water. This is the well of Zamzam that is still running with Zamzam water 1434 years later. Not normal. It is not normal to have a well gush like this forever.
Absolutely.
All wells run dry after some time. Even rivers get dry. Ponds get dry. But this one is running and running and running. And she was so grateful that she started to pray to Allah, thanking Him. Because she knows that if you have water, then you have cultivation, then you have plants, then community will come and build. Instead of just roaming as Bedouins in the desert, they will try to come and settle and build a community, and she will have people. And Ishmael will grow in a community. Alaykum as-salam wa rahmatullah. So, this is the brief story of Ibrahim and his young family. Then Ishmael grew up a bit older and he became a young man. His father came to visit, and together they remodeled, they rebuilt the Kaaba, as we are told the story in Surah Al-Baqarah, in the second part of the Quran. He and his son, and this is the part I was talking about yesterday, he and his son were both building the Kaaba. Ishmael is looking for stones, handing them to his dad. His dad is standing on a high stone to build the wall of the Kaaba, and his son was helping him. And as they were building the Kaaba, a task that is very holy and very sacred, to build the Kaaba. Imagine yourself being a member of a team that is building the Kaaba. Is there anything holier than that to be doing? The answer is no. It is a holy thing to be doing on behalf of the entire Ummah as a foundation and a center of worship. And this house that you are building is called the house of God, Baytullah. Okay? So, even though the task was sacred, the mission was sacred, they were still praying to Allah, asking Him to accept what they are doing. Oh Allah, accept from us, for you are the all-hearing, all-knowing. And then they pray further, oh Allah, make us both Muslims. Well, they are already Muslims. They are already living the epic of submission, the highest commitment, the highest level of submission. They are living it. They are living it. So how could anyone deny the fact that this is something that is an exhibit, an expression of their love and devotion and submission to Allah? But they are still praying, oh Allah, make us both Muslims. What is significant about this is, in their prayer, asking Allah to accept, they teach us that no matter how great the works you're doing may be, don't take its acceptance for granted. Don't say, I did this, as if Allah is obliged to accept it, or as if you are taking Allah for granted, that definitely Allah accepted what I have done, of prayer or charity or anything. Always be on your toes, because only an alert person can look for improvement. But the one who thinks he has done well, he only has now a chance to relax and lay back. But a Muslim should always be alert. So Ibrahim, in the epic of his obedience to Allah, is asking Allah for two things. Accept from me, accept from us, and make us both Muslims. I, Ibrahim, and my son Ishmael. And from our descendants also make them Muslims, which means in submission to you Allah, not to anyone, not to their desires, not to their wants, not even to their needs. Make them submit to you. When we submit to Allah, we become true Muslims. But when we submit or surrender to our desires, to our wants, then we are not only Muslims to Allah as Ibrahim has prayed. And then he prays further to Allah, O Allah, send unto them a messenger from amongst themselves to recite your ayat for them, to recite your verses, your ayat, your Quran for them, and to teach them the book and the wisdom. The book is the Quran, and the wisdom is the sunnah of the Prophet, the teachings of the Prophet, the traditions, the ways, the way of life of the Prophet ﷺ, the manners, the good manners of the Prophet ﷺ. So you read this prayer and you find amazing lessons as to what a child of Ibrahim should be like. He should be doing the works of Allah, asking Allah to accept. He should be in submission to Allah. He should be in the state of learning the book and the wisdom. He should also be in constant purification of himself or herself. We have 8 minutes in which I can take some of your questions.
My car is parked here, they will not tow it, right?
No, don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. Don't worry about it.
They don't tow the car.
He's the only person that can answer.
No, they don't tow.
Okay.
No, they don't tow.
Thank you.
Yes.
You spoke of the well, Zimzim.
Yes.
The water is still being poured out of this well?
Yes.
Wow. And also I heard that on Hajj people walk between the two hills.
Yes.
And they do that, I mean, do you get a feeling? What do they do that for? Like,
Well, they
I
do
mean, they
this.
walk back and forth, but
They do this as part of the rituals of Hajj to remember that the source of this whole place growing as it did since that time until today is the persistence and the devotion and the sincerity and the commitment of Hajar, the mother of Ishmael.
only women can walk back and forth, or
Yeah?
only women walk back and forth?
No. Men and women and children, everybody.
Oh, okay. And also the rock,
Yes.
the throwing of the stones?
Yeah, the throwing of the stones.
You didn't mention that story.
This is story I did not mention. When Ishmael and Ibrahim were in Mecca, as Ibrahim was visiting, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed Ibrahim in the dream that he were to slay his son. And Ibrahim spoke his dream to his son. And in showing Ibrahim the dream, it is known that the dream for prophets is a communication from God, which means for them it is no dream, it is a reality. Okay? Prophets do not hallucinate in their dreams. When they see something, it is true. When Allah speaks to them, He's actually speaking to them directly. Okay? So Allah commanded him to slay his son. So he goes to his son, young man Ismail, right? And he said to him, Ismail, I saw in my dream to slay you. Ismail, no hesitation, full submission, like his mother, right? Full submission. When he knew that this is from Allah, he told his dad, Daddy, do whatever you are commanded. You will find me patient enough for you to do it. So they prepare everything. They get the stone. Ismail lies, puts his head and neck on the stone, getting ready to be slain. And Ibrahim is ready to slay his own son. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would save his son. But before this, Satan comes and tells Ibrahim, Ibrahim, are you going to slay your own son? Are you nuts? You left your wife before in the desert, and this son was going to die. He was a baby. Huh? Now you want to slay your son? And Ibrahim throws some stones at the devil, and the devil moves away. And then Ishmael changes the place and moves forward. Settles, Ismail is ready, Ibrahim is ready, Satan comes again. The same is repeated. Okay? Then Ibrahim moves away again after throwing second set of stones at the devil, and then the devil comes again, but then Ibrahim throws the stones again for the last time, and Satan is gone, and Ismail is fully ready to slay his own son. And Allah tells him, Ibrahim, take that lamb and slaughter the lamb coming from heaven to you as a sacrifice instead of your son. You have fulfilled your order. You have done what you are commanded to do, and you have fulfilled your promise to be obedient, and we have saved you and your son from this test. So this is the background of the story of throwing the stone at a symbolic wall. It is not the devil, but it is just a symbol of that. That when we throw the stones, we should be stoning our own bad desires. We should be stoning our own lusts and our own negative feelings towards each other or towards God or towards our commitment. We should be throwing it at everything negative about us as humans. And we should be throwing at our weakness in front of the temptation of the devil, so that we kill the temptation of the devil.
Thank you.
Sure. Good question. Any other questions?
Lola has a question. She says, you notice that you said the foundation of the Kaaba was Adam's old house, and it came...
Not Adam's old house. This place was chosen by God as a place for his house. And he ordered Adam to build it. Adam built it. And 40 years later, God took Adam to the north in Jerusalem and commanded him to build Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa. And this comes in a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, when he recited the ayah in which Allah says, إِنَّ أَوَّلَ بَيْتٍ وُضِعَ لِلنَّاسِ لَلَّذِي بِبَكَّةَ مُبَارَكًا, that the first house of worship ever set up for people or laid down for people to worship God is that house in Mecca. Blessed and guidance for mankind. So the Prophet was asked, who built it? They said, Adam. He said, Adam. Then they said, that was the first house. What was the second house of worship? He said, Al-Aqsa Mosque. Then they asked him, who built it? He said, Adam. Then they said, what was the length of time between the construction of the two places? He said, it was 40 years between the two. So both places were designated by God, identified by the angels for Adam to build and establish the Kaaba and Jerusalem Aqsa Mosque. So Al-Aqsa Mosque becomes the center of prophethood from Ibrahim down until Jesus. From Ibrahim down until Jesus. And the Kaaba is to become the center of worship worldwide from Muhammad downward until the Day of Judgment. Okay? So the Islamic faith travels between Adam's time, Idris, and Noah, and then Ibrahim. Okay? All of these are children of each other. Okay? And from Ibrahim, all the faith and the prophets and everything, the religious, Islamic, I mean, was in Jerusalem around the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Okay? Then, by the coming of Prophet Ismail, Al-Kaaba became the center of worship, but only for the Arabs, until Prophet Muhammad came and he was commissioned to the world, not only to the Arabs. So the place was open for any Muslim from any place in the world who comes in submission to Allah to come and visit the mosque.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Any other question? Okay. This will be our last for today, so that we can catch up with the prayer. Okay. Okay. Let me ask you a question, please. For